Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome all the audience on behalf of iHubGujarat to Startup Square webinar series. A little brief of what Startup Square webinar series is. In order to strengthen the industry startup connection for delivering high values input to the ecosystem, iHub has launched Startup Square program to link industrial stakeholders with young founders. Startup Square is a program through which innovators, startups can get a single window interface to interact and co-create values with industries. So today's session is on logistics, ocean of opportunities for innovation, for which we have Mr. GowriShankar Paramasivam, head of Maersk Ocean Pro Accelerator program, joined in with us. I welcome you, sir.
Thanks, Kisha.
Before going forward to today's session, let me give a brief introduction of our speaker. Mr. GowriShankar is a digital enthusiast with over 15 years of diverse experience in logistics, e-commerce, transformation, and banking. He has been an innovation catalyst in multiple organizations, driving digital initiatives for some of the leading brands in retail and logistics. He has been a part of the ideation and formation of Maersk's corporate accelerator program and scaled it to the multiple geographies. He has actively explored startup ecosystem across the global landscape and has been part of deriving the common language innovation at Maersk. Now, I would like to request Mr. GowriShankar to take forward today's session. Please, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, all of you. This is a very interesting session for me to be part of. The last 6 years I've been with the shipping industry. Specifically, if you come to Maersk, you would probably understand that being a veteran in this industry is probably more than 2 decades, and I'm probably still very young for this industry. As an industry, it's one of the oldest as well. Even the organization that I represent is roughly about 120 years old. So just to set some stage for it. The reason why we call shipping as a huge opportunity for innovation is about to unfold as we get into this session. The primary intent is also to give an eye opener and also probably invite a lot more people to think beyond the native technology companies, because there's the wildest assumption that Google, Facebook, and these digital native companies contribute only about 6% of global trade and economy. There's 94% of the rest of the world which functions on the other businesses. As startups, we are generally drawn towards large tech companies to set our vision towards, but always remember that your market is something that is waiting out there of that. So that's the intent of these sessions. We will probably, Startup iHub is taking this great effort to bring clarity about multiple industries by bringing in people from the industry itself. And I thank Startup iHub to actually set this up, and their intent to listen to corporate leaders. It's a very good initiative, and I look forward to supporting them in future as well. Moving on into the session, just to give you some scale as to how big is this industry, right? The moment we say shipping, and here I'm largely talking about ocean shipping alone, but we'll also dive a little deeper into logistics in total. Ocean shipping alone contributes to roughly about 90% of the world trade, which means almost every single object that sits in front of you right now, starting from your laptop, your mobile phone, furniture, many of your everyday commodities have been into a container box or into a ship at least once in its lifespan before it reached you as an end consumer. It's worth about $12 trillion. That's the size of the $12 trillion. That's the size of the global seaborne trade. It's probably as big as some of the countries that we know in terms of GDP. And there's almost 1.5 million people employed on the sea right now as we speak across the world. And just to give you a sheer number of containers that is afloat at this moment across the world is about 20 million containers. So this is just to give you an idea. And not only that, right? It's one of the most economic industries or mode of transport for logistics. So people try to compare this against air freight, railways, and road, right? you could actually move a cargo at 5% of the original cost that you would spend if you have to move it with an air cargo. So that's the kind of difference, right? So if you have to pay 100 rupees to move something on air cargo, you just have to spend 5 rupees to move it on the ocean. So it's one of the most economic and cheapest options of shipping, and it's also very globe friendly. I'm sure the whole world is talking about carbon emissions right now, right? CO2 and how it is affecting the rest of the world. Shipping contributes the least amount of carbon emissions compared to the rest of the modes of transport. Less than 3% is what it contributes to the overall impact that is being created. But still, most shipping companies have come forward to even neutralize that as time passes by, and probably become zero carbon as an industry. It's the vision that has been set out. There's a saying that people in Scotland can actually move the fishes that are caught in Scotland. They can actually ship it to China, slice it over there, fillet it, and bring it back to Scotland. Still, it will be cheaper for them to do it that way rather than hiring somebody or employing someone to fillet it in Scotland. Shipping is such a cost-effective business, and it also continuously, reinvents itself over the thousands of years it has been in practice. Containerized shipping, what you see as the common, design of how we ship today, has been in practice for roughly about 60 years already. Uh, so it's an industry that's evolved over time, and it has got its own shape and form over these years. So that's just to give you an idea as to how big is this industry, how much money is involved in this industry, and what is the kind of impact it creates in your everyday life. It is not just a distant industry that you could only talk of, but it is also something that you experience day in, day out. Maersk Line, the company that I represent, is got as a legacy. As I said, it's about 100 years old, and they've been present in almost every piece of the shipping industry. We are a liner business. We move cargo on ships. We also run terminals and ports across the world, almost 70 plus terminals. We manufacture our own containers, and we also engage in, which is the rescue operations. Right now, we are heavily involved in warehousing business and strongly focusing on intermodal business. So that's Maersk Line, just to explain the nature of business that we are into, and that's the organization that I represent at the moment. And just like most of the shipping companies, Maersk has also set out a vision to become an end-to-end integrator of logistics solutions. So we don't want to be identified as only a shipping company. And this is something that most shipping companies are trying or striving really hard to become, is that we want to support the overall infrastructure of logistics from customer to consumer or end to end. That's what Maersk has been trying, and it's not small. To make that effort happen, there's almost 80,000 employees working for this brand across the world, and we are physically present in 130 countries, which means you walk into almost any country or any port, you would have an office with at least 20 to 30 colleagues sitting out of Maersk as an entity. So that's how big this organization is, and it has spent a lot of time perfecting its art. And even for a company of this size and this age, innovation was always understood as physical innovation in the shipping world. And I'll try to tell you. So Maersk has been extremely innovative, but until the last 2 decades, innovation was largely focused on how we move cargo effectively, and this was all about building better ships, bigger ships, or let's say containerization came into habit only 50 years back, right? As I said, we acquired the company which was involved in inventing the idea of containerization, Sealand. Now it's part of Maersk as a brand. Similarly, we also came up with this idea of what we call as slow steaming, which is around moving the vessel slower with least amount of fuel consumption, allowing it to be more economic and effective and efficient. So that's something that Maersk kind of meddled with a few decades back. We also came with what we call as triple E vessels, which are large monster vessels. Just to give you a size of it, these vessels are as big as 3 football fields stacked one after the other. 500 yards would be the size of a football field. Imagine if you have three of them, and then it could load roughly about 18,000 containers. 18,000 containers can go into these vessels. These were the idea of monster vessels, and that was the initiative that we took to kind of, create more demand, more supply in the market where demand was really high. So these are some innovations that we meddled at least 2 decades back. And then now, after after the whole world went into the revolution of technology that sits in our palm and that's today, Musk has been perfecting its art in other areas of technology. So it's not just about ocean and shipping that needs to be perfected, but it is all about all the support systems that also enable the whole business. Remember, the customer today who is working with Musk also orders from Amazon, also gets a pizza at his doorstep. So the expectations are being extremely different, unlike who our customers were about 30 years back. So their expectation is one click. Can I, get things done much faster and efficiently without having too much effort around it? Do I really want to go to an office for Musk, settlement of a bill or a document collection, while I can do everything online right now? So these are the kind of demands that Musk is trying to manage and evolving along with the rest of the industry in order to enable effective and efficient business. Um, and here I'm going to stop and take a pause here at this moment and say, is this only applicable for ocean shipping as a business? What about the end-to-end logistics? Right. The moment I say logistics, I want you to stop thinking about large trucks, large containers, and start thinking about the immediate everyday uses that you have. Think about your Swiggy food that you order that comes to your doorstep. Think about the Amazon orders that you place. All of these are efficient supply chain and logistics that are at service to enable what you are experiencing as a customer. And for that to happen, there's a whole lot of technology at play. And that's one of the reasons why we are even having this session at the moment. That we are not trying to just say that innovate for ocean shipping or shipping as a business, but innovate for the larger purpose of technology trends that are emerging in the logistics business. Um, DSL is one such company which has been publishing uh, trend data, logistics trend data around which technologies are at prime for the business right now and what is there in the next 5 years and what is there in the next 10 years. If you're someone who is curious, probably take a screenshot of this trend radar. You could also search for it on the internet. It has a detailed 84-page report talking about each of these trends. But I want you to kind of shift focus into the screen right now. Whatever you're seeing right now is a representation of different technologies at play for logistics as single business. If you are a startup, you're probably sitting in any one of these technologies right now and assuming that it is not going to be necessarily important for logistics or shipping. If so, take your head away from it. Start thinking on those lines. Um, Logistics is heavily dependent on big data and analytics right now as we speak. There's a whole lot of expectation in terms of bringing in a lot more IoT, Internet of Things, to enable logistics. Robotics and automation is almost the crux of how we operate. There's a whole lot of artificial intelligence that we are experimenting with. Blockchain is another huge technology that is emerging as a trend in logistics. And just to give you the size of impact that blockchain is creating, uh, stop thinking about cryptocurrencies. Blockchain's got a lot more application in the market. To the extent that Maersk even formed a joint entity along with IBM, and the company is called IBM Trade Lens. And this was primarily to use blockchain as a technology to digitize every single step of shipping, and that starts from end to end, from customer to consumer. And that's something that blockchain enables. While you look at the larger grid outside, you see things like 3D printing, unmanned aerial vehicles, quantum computing, and bionic enhancement. These are also emerging tech, which means that uh, in about 20 years from now, how often do you think someone would be manufacturing something that is customized for you from one place and shipping it to the other, rather if they have an option to 3D print it in that very same location? So what will happen to the idea of warehouses over a number of years? So it's been thought through to that extent that these are also part of logistics as an envisioned technology. It is not anymore a separate area of focus. Think about how self-driving vehicles and unmanned aerial vehicles can actually change the space of last mile logistics. Uh, Today, you have someone knocking at your door, delivering your packages, but will that be necessary if you have completely governed self-driving vehicles or unmanned drones which can drop cargo for you? Will it be safe enough or not? Yes, there's a lot of companies which are trying and testing it for pharmaceutical delivery right now. I've worked with, or rather discussed with a company which does that, how they are managing the security of that concept. But there's a lot of work in these different technology spaces, augmented and virtual reality. I'm sure we are looking at it as a gaming and an entertainment related tech. It is one of the biggest technologies to be tampered with if you are looking forward to enable remote management of a lot of assets. Shipping is a business which involves keeping your assets far away in the ocean, right? Imagine the access that someone gets to have if they have augmented reality to meddle with these, physical assets, or mixed reality to meddle with these physical assets. So these are all the technology areas. On the other hand, you also have social and business trends, right? So what you're seeing right now is the kind of impact that that can happen with the help of these technologies coming into play. Packaging can be completely rethinked with the amount of discussion, and you don't have to think really big for this. Again, look at organizations like Chai Point, which is actually creating a customized cardboard carton to deliver chai to your doorstep, which was impossible some time back, right? So you could never order a coffee or a tea unless and only you have a container with you. And now they're trying to tetra packet and delivered hot. So repackaging, rethinking the whole packaging idea, sustainable logistics, the CO2Cs that I was talking about, omni-channel logistics, where you don't have to rely on a single channel of moving your cargo. Fresh chain is enabling how you could bring food to your plate or farm to your table much faster, enabling last mile logistics to be much efficient and much faster with the help of real-time tracking and very efficient last mile logistics. So these are some emerging trends, and you also see on the outer edge of this, you see space logistics. If you're surprised, don't be, because very soon you're going to be discussing about people who are going to be visitors that colonizing other planets, and tourism, space tourism can become a natural reality. So as logistics companies, are you prepared for space logistics? Delivering packages and cargoes for international space stations, which are sitting way up above. So these are different trends that are emerging in the logistics space, and this kind of paints a large picture of things that we as people who are aspiring to build business look at. That logistics is a market which is worth about couple of $1 trillion, and it's got potential to use many of these technologies that are at play right now. And keeping your idea and innovation open will allow you to explore this market and take advantage of the business that we're discussing about. Giving a pause on that, I'll try to move back into my world, where I come from, in Maersk. How we kind of slowly started exploring these possibilities. About 3 years back, at Maersk, we kind of had the idea of saying that as a large corporate, a 120-year-old old man, will we have the capability to go and work with small startups, which are less than 10 member by size, which are less than 2 year old, and but bringing up great technology at play? Can we work with them, create synergy with them, and probably even add value to the organization and support the startup ecosystem in India? So that's how the idea behind Ocean Pro was kickstarted. We started it with strong support from our business leaders like Navneet Kapoor, Sriram Narayan Swamy, and our group CEO Soren Sko was physically present for this launch. It is a pride to lead this initiative for both India and China at the moment. But I have some amazing colleagues who support this initiative, and that's why it's been able to create the impact that we're creating right now. Let me move into the details of how this initiative was coined, right? So as we realized that there was a strong need for us to establish an entrepreneurial mindset in order to stay on top of the innovation ecosystem. If you end up working only with large corporates, there's a certain amount of difficulty that you face, and the partnerships are generally planned for much longer time, and the ability to fail and experiment kind of thins down. And that's why we came up with the idea of Ocean Flow, which is a time-bound accelerator program which works with startups, creates quick experiments to verify what can be done with a startup capability and create an impact in the market and also for us as a business. But it also had a counterbalance that is also about giving an opportunity for startups to understand the business of this magnitude and also expose them to a market which they haven't been aware of, right? So that's how it started as a journey. We we are right now present in India and China, but we started initially in Bangalore, in India, and we've always kept some basic rules to make this realistic and also fruitful for people who partner with us. Right? We work with real business problems. It's not about just working with a startup. It's also about giving them something real to solve and giving them an opportunity to understand this business in better reality. Till date, I've personally met almost 1,000 plus startups, and we worked with 26 of them as of today, and cutting across both India and China. And the idea is always time-bound experiments. Under 4 months, what can you do, and how can we solve this problem better in order to create a realistic impact in the business? So that's how Ocean Pro has been designed, and we've been afloat for the last 3 years now. And this is the third year for us, officially we've close to 2 years. And we've seen a great amount of support from the leadership in the organization and also from the startup ecosystem as to what can be done for this business. So I'm going to take you a little deeper to show the kind of technology companies that we work with as an organization. And also I'm going to show you some examples in a little more detail to clarify why shipping as a business doesn't have to work only with logistics startups or shipping startups. And also to put it in perspective for you, globally there's about 600 plus corporate accelerators. And I'm not giving incorrect stats here. So 600 plus corporate accelerators, but only 13 of them focusing specifically on logistics and shipping, and hardly one in India. So that's not so much. So that kind of shows that as an industry and a market, it is not being exposed or experimented enough. And also knowing the size of this market, the amount of economy that runs in this market, there's a huge opportunity for us to optimize it. So jumping straight into the areas that we've experimented with startups. I'm going to talk about each of these technologies and the startups that we're working with, and what you're seeing on the screen. It's a full spectrum of all the startups that we work with. There's a few more that is not yet added in this slide, but this kind of gives you a good dynamics to show, hey, any technology has a role to play in this business. That's what the takeaway message is, right? As I rightly said, blockchain was tested with a company called 𝒃𝒐𝒐. We tried to digitize one of the important documents in the shipping lifecycle called the bill of lading. If you're someone who knows shipping, you would also understand how some of these service providers in the market right now are using this technology to solve for this problem. There's Entropic Tech, which is the UX research company. I'll give you a little more deep dive into it, where we used brainwave mapping and an ocular trace, which is eyeball or retina movement, to understand what is the kind of impact that we can create with our online customer experience per se. You also have someone like a 𝒃𝒐𝒐𝒕, which is an AI company. They are into focusing on image-based analytics. And you wouldn't believe this. This company was actually coming from the background of doing analysis of human cornea images to identify how soon someone gets a cataract disease. From there, we adopted them into the space of analyzing images of containers to identify the damages and how much of that can be repaired with what kind of effort. So, they also were used largely in the insurance space for car insurance, very similar area into analyzing damages by looking at just the photographs or the video. You can also talk about someone like a container triangulation effort, which was largely using AI and machine learning to identify the ideal place to pick and drop a container. We've used virtual reality with a company called Monolith or Lavella Pictures to give digital tours of our vessels. And these are 360-degree video tours, which is not very common in the market if you look at it as a technology. So these tours were immersive learning. So if you have an opportunity to look at them, it is available on Maersk YouTube channel as 360-degree videos. There's tours of our vessel, Tripoli vessel, and also one of our warehouses in Shanghai. When we did this, we were able to bring almost 12,000 of our employees on a vessel by virtual effort, right? And it came in really handy just when COVID struck us. When COVID happened, we were able to use the warehouse, VR content as a marketing campaign effort, so that we were able to show our customers how our warehouses look like, what technology was at play, even without having them to visit those warehouses, without the need for someone to risk their social distancing. So that's what we were able to achieve with something like a virtual reality technology. We've tried 3D and 2D modeling for how we could load cargo into a container with a startup called Dorabot, which is based out of China, and a lot more in the space of document digitization. Every time you go into this industry, shipping or anything that involves a certain amount of government interaction, there is a need for a physical document, a printed document that comes into play. Digitizing the initial cycle of it, which means converting that into electronic content, is a lot more complex cycle. And many governments are at play working on it, fixing them. But imagine a company like Maersk, where we are already working with 180 countries of different levels of maturity of technology. We are working on a lot of technology that involves digitization of our documents that are received from end customers, from PDF documents, from scanned images. How can we extract content effectively without having to type them down in the age-old technology methods? You have OCR, which is the oldest technology in the market. But imagine having OCR with machine learning, with AI to identify the right mix and building more digitization efforts. So these are just a spectrum of startups that we work with. And the idea behind doing this is to also show you that the possibilities that can be unlocked with the help of these startup engagements have been immense. We've been able to accelerate our transformation journey much faster. We've been able to motivate our internal teams to come up with more and more innovative ideas by just showing what is possible with the help of these startup interventions. And it allows us to also keep our agility and nimbleness as an organization, and also keep opening up for newer startups to come up with better products for our intent. So that's just a summary of all the startups that we work with. These are some areas that we are looking at, and probably going to be working with some more startups in these upcoming year. We are looking at robotic startups which has underwater capabilities in order to clean the vessels or inspect them for damages, which allows better fuel efficiency. We have gate traffic management using computer vision. I'm sure you would have heard about CCTV camera footages becoming smarter day by day, right? Imagine if it has the capability to tell you that how much of these vehicles can go into a congestion by looking at it from a 1.5 kilometer distance, and probably predict when to communicate them to come in or stop. COVID as a situation has opened up a new need for us. We have contracted with some large organizations which are distributing vaccines across the world, or in the place of creating vaccinations. It requires a huge supply chain and logistics rigor, because vaccine is a commodity or a cargo which can go into black market if not tracked and traced appropriately. Even today, UNICEF, which is delivering vaccines across the world and also in African countries, performs a lot of track and trace initiatives on these vaccines because it can land in the wrong hands and become an expensive commodity if not distributed appropriately. So vaccine traceability is an area where we are working with a couple of startups. We are looking at some extremely complex cybersecurity problems, which we are trying to address with startup help. Yes, from 2017, we've also perfected ourselves as an organization to become extremely cybersecurity aware, but also we are investing a lot more efforts to make it even sharper and better by working closely with young startups in this area. We are working with voice analytics team to improve our customer experience by engaging with analysis of customer calls, and also working on some items around dynamic pricing. So these are some areas that, as an organization, that we are trying to put together and focus on in the upcoming space using Ocean Flow. But other than this, Maersk is also targeting a lot of technology initiatives, cutting across different areas. We've even started a specific initiative called the Zero Carbon Shipping, which is always about neutralizing the carbon emissions that we create, climate focused and globe focused initiatives that are set to the mission around zero carbon shipping by 2050. So that's just a picture of it as to what we are doing right now. I'm going to go into last one or two slides just to give you a picture of some of the detailed efforts in these use cases. This is Entropic Tech. I assume that you remember that I was talking about brainwave mapping. As much as we are a shipping company, we also have one of the most active e-commerce websites, which means people place bookings online for moving cargo on ships. Our e-commerce platform reaps revenue as high as $1 million per hour, which is significantly huge. So it is important for us to sharpen our website to create great customer experiences. One of those efforts was to work with this team called Entropic Tech, which comes with strong capability to analyze the eye gaze pattern, which means how an end customer looks at the screen and what is the kind of emotions that they go through when looking at your web page or when they are pressing a button in your web page. They perform some very interesting experiments on our web page, and they've shared some great insights which we are working on right now to perfect our user experience. So that's one example just to show you that how a logistics company, largely related with boxes, iron boxes, and ships, has invested a whole lot of efforts in sharpening how an online experience of a customer looks like. This is around what I spoke to you on a Chinese startup called Dorabot. They help with us in 3D modeling how a container can be stacked with different multi-sized cargo, because doing that will allow us to load one container with maximum cargo rather than putting too many containers which are partially utilized. So they perform 2D and 3D mapping, and they try to optimize the way we load our containers. It allows in the space of container freight stations, or CFS offices as we call it, to load cargo effectively and efficiently. Last, and I would probably stop with this, we worked with a company called LinkDot, a very small Bangalore-based startup, a very amazing team to work with. What we did was, in the place of talking about traceability, today everyone would know, right? Say, hey, track cargo, all you have to do is put a GPS box or a sensor on top of it, you can track it. That will be the common understanding, right? An IoT device, a battery-powered IoT device will solve the problem. That's the common understanding. But imagine, just to looking at the size of the business, there's 20 million dry containers across the world. Even if you have to put a $50 box on every single container, that's a couple of $1 billion to be spent. And that's a lot of money to spend, and the devices cannot be indefinitely powered when they are on a container box, right? So they need a power source. So having everything traceable with without having a real GPS box on a container requires some amount of data and thought. And that's what link dots did for us, right? We basically connected the idea of how fleet trucks are being monitored right now using a GPS device. And knowing the fact that some of our containers land in these trucks which already has a GPS device, why should we have a separate GPS box on the container? All you have to do is identify a way to collect all this data, bring them together, and understand where exactly your container is on a real-time basis. That's kind of the idea behind what we did with this company called LinkDot. They were, as I told you, they were in Bangalore, but they are making this possible for almost 14 different countries in the world right now, tracking roughly about 5,000 plus trucks a day. Um, these are all realities that happened after we started this engagement with multiple startups using Ocean Pro as a model. With that, I would like to bring my session to an end, and maybe I'll request Tisha and Saurabh to help summarize this, or if there is any questions, happy to take.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful brief about the Ocean Pro and what the Maersk is doing to accelerate the startups working in the different domains, especially with the technology, but in the logistics and supply chain. So I have some couple of questions through our audiences. So one is regarding how an investment park works in the Maersk, the whole ecosystem of the startup acceleration. If someone looking at the investment purposes for accelerating their technology, their ideas, and how it can be possible with them.
Okay. From an investment point of view, Maersk has a separate entity called the Maersk Growth. One of my partnering functions, I would say they are a very close colleague with us. They sit out of Copenhagen in Denmark right now. And their primary efforts is to act as a venture capitalist team, just like any other VC organization. Their primary efforts is to go around and identify startups which are fit for investment, largely focusing on external ecosystem of logistics. So what they invest in right now are areas like food preservation. They invest in smart mobility. They also invested in packaging. They've invested in areas like food processing, reefer container technology. These are some areas that they've looked at. You could probably explore Maersk Growth website, which is available online. They have roughly about 11 to 12 portfolio companies right now, and they have a fairly huge investment potential only if you're able to create that additional value for them to recognize. We exchange notes between Ocean Pro and Growth. So if they find a great team, they refer it to us. And if we end up working with an amazing startup, we also refer it back to Growth, saying that someone looks like they qualify for your investment. So that's how the relationship has been. That's something that you could also look forward to if you're a person looking at investment from a shipping or
Yeah, thank you, sir. That was great. So I think this Maersk growth program is helping a lot of startups and increasing their value in the ecosystem. And the next question we have is related to the AR/VR. You have mentioned this AR/VR has a huge potential in the logistic industry. So how is the opportunities going to come in the future for those companies who are working with little practical models and they are demonstrating with small objectives? So how does logistic companies will help them in future? What are the opportunities?
Definitely. So, and specifically around mixed reality and AR, while VR can be largely in the area of learning, but in terms of assisted learning or secure learning environment, shipping or ocean shipping as a business has a lot of safety hazardous areas that we operate with. Talk about crane operators who use extremely heavy weight containers using gantry cranes. It's like operating a joystick on top of extremely heavy assets, right? Or talk about people who are involved in underwater diving for cleaning the rudders or any maintenance work on a ship, dredging operations on ports, or any kind of maintenance activities that involve huge machinery are right now done in real world, which means either they are done on a simulation. A simulation is something that is put on a computer screen only, or they are done on a fall simulated area, which means there is a temporary setup which looks like the real vessel, are right now, you could actually have somebody to operate crane without having them to sit on a real gantry crane.
True.
You could actually let them to service underwater rudder without having them to mask up and go underwater. And the ability to remote guidance is also significantly high. Imagine if you have to fly somebody from the port to the middle of the sea in order to maintain a vessel. But if you have a connectivity, you could actually guide them 100% remotely just with the help of technologies like AR and mixed reality. By having a complete wireframe of the machinery inside the vessel, you could actually say, hey, this is the pipe that you have to unlock, and this is the nut that you have to tighten, even without having the expert to fly from one place to other. So the possibilities are huge, but primarily in the areas of learning and training and building that visibility of this business. One of the examples that I told you was using our VR campaign for marketing and visibility purpose. Right? Not all of your customers are going to understand the complexity of your business unless they really visit your warehouse or ship, and the ability that VR can give for that is huge. And even having to see what your business is like on the other side of the world, the customer can make decisions which are much better with the help of immersive learning experiences. So that's just as an idea.
Great, sir. So I guess the whole of the visualization part works on the AR in the future, and all the simulation part can be done in the logistic industries, so that anyone the remotely can work around, and there's no time bound and there's no physical requirement. Right. Thank you, sir, for that. And one more I would like to throw light on this. So there are a lot of assets attached to the companies in the logistic industry. So they have a lot of assets with them. For example, you have containers, you have safe. So how you manage those assets? So there are huge, like you have invested a lot of capital on assets. So how you manage those assets which are movable, and so there was some questions about this, how the management of that assets comes, because it goes from one place to other place, countries to countries, and that goes on.
As you rightly said, it is a risk-heavy and asset-heavy business. No debate about it at all.
Right.
Maersk has approximately 4 million containers across the world. And at any point in time, we expect these containers to be afloat on the sea, right? We have some strong efforts around smart assets or digitization of our assets, which is at play right now. I wouldn't say we have all of it under control at the moment, but we are working on having IoT and PLE and RFID as technologies which can enable better track and trace for our assets to start with. We also use heavy dependency on the documentation process, which means our partners in the cycle, which means terminal operations, container depots, yards to manage operations. All of these setups right now have digital abilities to create a better asset log, which used to be just paperwork in the past. Now today, having that all go into a system, you could actually tally the existence and movement of your asset without having to rely on physical technologies like GPS or an RFID, right? Just having the ability to see where exactly your cargo is gives you more and more power over your asset. Still, in spite of this, there's a stat which says there's almost 10,000 containers that is lost annually at the sea. And imagine the size of a container, and it can still be lost and gone completely invisible. It is a asset risk business. We don't deny that, and it involves a heavy capital in order to run this business. That's one of the reasons only few people are at play with this.
So rightly said, sir, and this is a lot of investments involved on those assets, and a lot of capitals has been put to maintain the whole logistic system. So if someone is come up with this idea that they will provide an end-to-end solution for the asset management, how you will try to engage with Maersk?
We will be happy to explore. Given the scale of the problem, I don't know if one single entity can solve all of it. Given the size and the number of assets that we manage, but we will be happy to explore if there are any interesting solutions to support asset management for us. Yes, there will be challenges with the retrofit and having to work with our existing systems. which has a legacy of systems. But
Right.
we'll be happy to explore that if there is somebody that is coming up with an idea.
So, sir, when is the next cohort is going to start? Like some of them have already raised this question. When is the next cohort will start? And if you are floating some of the challenges, like you have mentioned, there are a lot of opportunities in those challenges. So, how does the next cohort is going to start?
So we've converted our model. So after running 3 cohorts in India, we've converted our model into a rolling cohort, which means that we will not
Okay.
really start and stop. We will keep
Right.
our
Right.
eyes open for best initiatives as we continuously pursue. So you could say it has already started. So we are right now.
Great.
So
Great.
whatever you saw on that screen today about vaccine traceability, dynamic pricing, voice analytics,
Mhm.
these are some technologies that we are pursuing and attending to at the moment. We are also looking at few more interesting use cases in the pipeline. As it keeps coming, we will open it up and listen to startups in the market. So that's how we've kept it. On the other hand, we are also, very curious about reverse pollination. So while we say that we are a business case driven accelerator, we don't close our eyes when there is a great technology startup coming up to us saying that, hey, I have a solution for you. It always doesn't have to be a forward running business. So if someone comes up and says that, hey, I have a technology startup and I believe it can solve some of your problems, and this is my plan of action, we are always happy to listen. Me and my team, we have a huge amount of mental research for that. On an average week, I spend at least time on just listening to 10 different startups on an average week. And it could be, not everyone cuts it into the program, but we are very happy to share thoughts, learn, and experiment with different people. It allows us to spar and think about different models of engagement. So,
Uh,
absolutely.
That's great. Like I'm happy to hear that from you. Like you have spent a week for the 10 startups. So that's the amount of energy you are putting to take that idea and take it into the forward with the mass. So that was wonderful, sir. So one last question I will just want to have is you rightly mentioned there are 18,000 people associated with Maersk in the business and roughly 1.5 million people across the sea is involved with logistics. So if someone is coming up with a social impact driven model for the social entrepreneurship, so how this model can be deployed if someone is coming with social impact idea for this 1.5 million people across the sea?
The 1.5 million people is all seafarers, and there is definitely a good need for these people to have a much better scale of life, or rather quality of life at sea. There are many generalized bodies and organizations supporting seafarers. There is maritime orgs across the world. Every country has its own maritime governance body, like US, India. You talk about any country, they have their own maritime governance body. These entities will be really interested to listen how you are able to regulate or improve the quality of life for the seafarers at play. So 1.5 million people are seafarers who are working on probably thousands of vessels across the world. And there's a whole lot of opportunity in that area, no doubts about it. But it is well managed, or rather well implemented, if it is done by a body which is generic to multiple organizations rather than focusing on one organization. That would be my recommendation or suggestion if someone is coming up with that.
Right. Thank you, sir, for all the questions you have answered, and I hope the listeners and all the audiences here has get insight on how they can innovate in this logistic segment in association with Mars or with other logistic companies, but they'll get an insight if they want to innovate in the future. So there are huge gaps. I guess there are a lot of things to be managed, and as you mentioned some of the parts, and they can definitely work on those challenges, and they can present to you if there is a viable solution. So we will take this forward, and thank you for sparing your time, sir, and we will hope to see you soon for our upcoming programs. We would like Merz to be one of our partner to take forward the innovation pipeline, and You have rightly mentioned that the innovation has no boundaries for the ocean of opportunities are there. Right, sir. So thank you for sparing your time, and we would like to host you again.
Thanks, Saurabh. Thanks, Kisha, and thanks to the iHub team. This has been a great session, and I hope it was some information and good value to the people who listened.
Right, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you.